Okay, so I will just briefly give some introductory remarks before we start with this indeed very exciting panel of speakers and experts on circular economy. I just wanted to briefly reflect upon why circular economy in Europe is the way forward, or otherwise put, why Europe is a good place to implement circular economy. So Europe indeed appears to be a good place and the right time for going circular. First of all, Europe is very dependent on imports, so that's one factor that pushes Europe towards circular economy. Then we also have a second factor that we see a lot of experimentation in different niches. In Europe, we have a lot of diversity, in institutional and cultural diversity, that allows for experimentation in circular economy, and this is another factor that is supporting this tendency. Thirdly, we have a single market, and we have rules for the single market that can be used as leverage for a circular economy. And finally, and maybe most importantly, we are seeing important changes in the policy landscape. So we are seeing not only at the European level. I'm sure that you're familiar with the circular economy package and the EU action plan on circular economy that was presented in December last year. But also at the regional and even local level, we see a lot of policy initiatives. You have big cities like Paris that started the États généraux de l'économie circulaire. You have Amsterdam with a very ambitious circular economy package. Next month, the city of Brussels will present a circular economy plan for the region of Brussels. So you have a lot of policy initiatives that are pushing towards circular economy, and that is very, very important. When I say these are, I was wondering, how do we get there? How do we change the policy landscape so quickly in favor of circular economy? And there's obviously a lot of different reasons, and there's a lot of also intellectual heritage ideas and concepts that have been already formulated a long time ago. So this is not brand new. There's thoughts about circular economy or related ideas that have been around for quite a long time, especially in the discipline in which I'm working on at the moment, ecology. Industrial ecology is something that has appeared in the 70s and 80s, and a lot of the ideas of industrial ecology have been kind of recycled into circular economy. So we can also use insights from industrial ecology for the type of discussion that we're having today. There's also a lot of input that has come for this changing policy landscape from the consultancy sector. I think we really should acknowledge the input from consultants here. I think they maybe even be more efficient in having managed to change the policy landscape than we as researchers. But the one group of people that has been probably the least influential are economists. Circular economy is something that is pretty far from mainstream economics as we see them today, and that I see as a big challenge for policy that wants to be evidence-based. We I think also have to incorporate the knowledge of economists in this discussion. One very important economic distinction that we can maybe use today for understanding some of the challenges. So even if Europe is a very good place and if it's the right time to go towards a circular economy, there's obviously a lot of challenges that we have to overcome. And one of these challenges is linked to the distinction between a business model and an economic model. So a lot of circular economy ideas are formulated in terms of business model. A business model is something that a company uses to make money, to like a profitable concept that it's implementing at its scale. An economic model is something that is more encompassing. Different businesses getting together. It's about the relationships between different businesses, but also about the rules that encompass the activities of businesses. When we talk about moving towards a circular economy, I think it's more about changing the economic model, and it's also obviously also about changing business models, but these business models have to be incorporated in something that is much more encompassing. It's a systemic change. It's a more holistic question. And that is obviously much more difficult. than changing just the business model of an individual company. It requires a series of very deep changes, I think, in how we go about steering economic activity. These changes are related to regulation. If it's about changing from one economic model to another economic model, we have to formulate regulation and policies that are able to be systematic, and not only about small percentages changes. A lot of the standard way of going about regulation was often about changes at the margin and not changes at the systemic holistic level. So we have to be able to formulate regulations that are able to change economic models. The second one is about indicators, I think. How to formulate indicators that allow us to choose between alternative options of going circular. How to define targets. How to define indicators that do not hide away the complexity. How to keep the discussion at a model that is systemic and holistic, because indicators, especially quantitative indicators, have the tendency to reduce the complexity for the sake of clarity and objectivity. But we have to formulate indicators that keep the discussion as something that is more encompassing, that is more systemic. Thirdly, I would raise the issue of greenwashing. How can we avoid that this very attractive and ambitious concept will be kind of watered down and be used for all kinds of purposes and end up in 2 or 3 years as something disappointing when people will not associate it clearly to something that they can understand and associate with something positive. So greenwashing, how to avoid greenwashing in the circular economy discussion. And the third and the fourth and final issue, I think that we will discuss with our very interesting panel is scale. At what scale does circular economy happen? Is it something local? Is it something European? Is it something international? I think it's all of that. But how do we define the relationships between the different scales? How can a regional circular economy plan be complementary to a European or globalized circular economy agenda and not be counterproductive? And I think there is, like we already mentioned over coffee a minute ago, an underlying tension between a tradition of globalization and free trade on the one hand, and on the other hand, locally sourced raw materials, short-circuit economies. So there is an underlying tension that we somehow have to clarify and address.